Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is How to Use Mimikyu. We are finally checking out this amazing little Pokemon right here, and Mimikyu is freaking magical when it comes to using it in battle. Like, this Pokemon is really good, and the Ghost Fairy typing is just an awesome typing overall. Like, it works out really well thematically, and then when you break it down, it's also a really good defensive typing. We only have a weakness to Ghost and Steel, and we're a fairly tanky Pokemon, so that's not going to be the worst thing ever. Like, Ghost, we can deal with that. Steel, manageable as well. So that's taken care of. We're pretty solid. And then we have immunities. 3 immunities. Normal, fighting, and dragon on the Mimikyu. That gives us a lot of safety and a lot of options. The only issue is that we don't have a lot of resistances, but that kind of shows like how interesting this typing is. The dichotomy of this typing makes it to where we have low weakness, low resistances, but we still make it work anyways. Offensively, Ghost Fairy covers for itself really well. That, alright, Ghost hits pretty much everything neutrally, and then Fairy, you can kind of go and cover for the Ghost with the Dark super effective hit, and then just the normal, yeah, you can hit normal Pokemon. That's really all that we need to know about that. And then the stats. Mimikyu stats are some of the most interesting I've seen in Pokemon, honestly. That's a mix between like Rotom's tanky form and then an Aegislash kind of. It does damage, it has a respectable amount of speed, and its tankiness, I think, is just right. Because as we get more and more into the 7th generation, these stats just work. Like, when you look at them, they look about average, but it just adds to everything that Mimikyu has in its toolkit, and that works out really well. Like, 96 base speed. Well, even if we don't invest into it, we can now break down pretty much every tank Pokemon in the game with ease, and even outspeed some other Pokemon that are trying to specialize in some kind of speed investment. With 90 on the attack, well, that's still 2-hit KOing a lot of things with the Play Rough or any kind of stab-based move, so we're getting a lot of damage pickups right there. And then the high defenses, like 105 special defense, 80 on the defense, we just max invest the hit points, and then we're covering for both defenses really well, so we become a very rounded tank while doing damage, while having a surprising amount of speed that we can utilize however we want. And then the disguise ability. Once per battle, the Pokemon can withstand 1 damaging attack without receiving any damage. So it's just, it has that effective tankiness as well. That you get a free turn, and then you get to deal with the Mimikyu. That Mimikyu gets to do whatever it wants, and it turns out right now the primary setup is Swords Dance. So Mimikyu doesn't play like this very tricky, sneaky little Pokemon. It's very straightforward, but there are some things that still make it different, that you never know if you're going up against like a massive tank Mimikyu that can still withstand all of your hits while doing solid amounts of damage or anything like that. I would say that the only disguise drawback would be confusion. Damage from confusion will break the disguise. So that feels a little bad right there, but everything else works. Damage inflicted through entry hazards, weather, or status will not break the disguise, so it can still just kind of come in all out things and then work out really well. So that's where the freedom of disguise ability is going to be, and Mimikyu also gets access to the Splash. Splash is usable now. Splash is very viable, so we will talk about that later when we go into the moveset, but we can see it's pretty standard. Shadow Claw, Shadow Sneak, and then the Play Rough. So it feels a lot like Aegislash, that we go for a lot of setup on Swords Dance into Shadow Sneaks, and then we also have a primary move for big amounts of damage. For Aegislash, it's usually the Sacred Sword, and for Mimikyu, we're getting the Stab on the Play Rough, which is high amounts of base power, so it pulls up our damage in comparison to the Aegislash pretty well. And then we have some other things. Bulk Up could be an option, Leech Life for the healing, and then there's the Swords Dance. So looking at other things Mimikyu can do, Psych Up could be devastating in double battles, or even in single battles. Like, that'd be pretty ridiculous because you have the disguise ability. So you just pop in, oh, they've been using Dragon Dance all game long, oh, they've been boosting their stats all game long, Psych Up, win. I haven't seen any people running the Psych Up. I don't know why. Like, that is how you play the Mimikyu, if you can just kind of switch it into the opponent's big, I'm going to nuke you now, and you can even fake them out. Like, okay, you bring in a tanky Pokemon that's kind of slow on the setup, and then you let them abuse your tanky Pokemon setup, and then you psych it up, or you can just combo for it in the doubles. And then looking at the other things, like it gets Thunder Wave, gets Will-O-Wisp, it gets like Taunt and stuff in the Pain Split. So it feels like it could play as a sneaky little tanky Pokemon, but I just prefer to go all out on the Mimikyu, and that's awesome. Like, you don't have to run any kind of slow game on the Mimikyu. It just goes into Swords Dance, and then everything dies, and that's been kind of showing to be true on both Pokemon Showdown and the Battle Spot and everywhere. Mimikyu is really powerful, so we start to see a lot of variation. Some people are running Life Orb, some people are running other items, some people have Shadow Claw instead of Leech Life. There's a lot of different ways to play Mimikyu, and that's also what makes it scary. Like, is this the Life Orb set that's going to nuke me out of existence, or is it trying to be a little tankier for that staying power? Then you have to make that call and hope it works out, kind of like an Aegislash. If you fall into that Aegislash prediction and you get the wrong one, well, now you get absolutely bodied. So it starts to add up right there. But overall, I like Leech Life more because it's going to mitigate the Life Orb burn, which as a tanky Pokemon is bad, but you need the Life Orb because you're either healing more or you're finding little bits of extra damage. So when you go into +4 on your Swords Dance, so you use 2 Swords Dance, and then the game just kind of ends right there. And if you make it to 3 Swords Dance at max attack, now your Shadow Sneak is like KOing things. Just like an Aegislash. So you go to max, and then Shadow Sneak everything, and then you're tanky enough, or you have enough in your kit to survive anything else, and then go and deal with Pokemon that don't go down to the Shadow Sneak. Also, when you think about Shadow Sneak, it works really well against Pokemon that are outspeeding you. Because you Shadow Sneak, take a hit, Shadow Sneak, well, that's no different than taking a hit, going into Shadow Claw, except Shadow Sneak, double Shadow Sneak, is more damage. So when you're at 2 Swords Dance, you might find KOs for effectively the same thing. The only issue is that Pokemon that wall you out. So Pokemon that are going to be slower than you, that are going to be like a Steel type that also ignore that play rough, a Poison type Pokemon that also like ignores just anything you're trying to throw out with a Fairy, you don't have as much damage as them because if you outspeed a tank Pokemon with a Shadow Claw, that is going to suck for them. And also Shadow Claw does have that high critical hit ratio. And you could even punch through defenses or at least really disrupt your opponent with free bonus damage at a higher chance. But I also like the Leech Life. It doesn't really add too much to your coverage, unfortunately, but it is going to be very useful like that. You can run whatever you want. That's just kind of how the Mimikyu works. And then Adamant Nature on that 90 with the 55 and hit points. All of a sudden, you hit Mimikyu and you're like, why doesn't this thing take damage? Then it kind of shows really well. Also, you can change it for damage numbers. Like some people, you know, if you're looking at it like that, you can put some into defensive investment after cutting it out of the attack. Because, alright, at +3, at +4, at plus whatever, it stops mattering and you're KOing 2-hit KOing things anyways. So you can get rid of the stack investment and still be very bulky while having enough damage out of your Swords Dance and healing from the Leech Life. And then we have Splash. Z-Move Splash makes it to where you gain +3 in your attack. I don't think it's worth it because if you're running Splash, then you can't run the Swords Dance. And if you go for 2 Swords Dance, that's going to be more powerful than the Z-Move Splash. And then you used your Z-Move for the battle. But this could work on a just pure offensive set. If you want to try to outspeed a ton of things and you want to max invest in the attack and then go for it, you can do that for a quicker setup, and it can get you out of some sticky situations where if Mimikyu still has some frailty, that if it just eats super effective hits or if it comes in at the wrong time, that could be quite a bit of a problem for it. But overall, I just think that if the opponent's going for setup, it's like you come in on free substitute, which is like a nightmare of most tanky Pokemon. So then you just they have to deal with it, and by then you've gone +2 on the Swords Dance, go for another Swords Dance, survive their hit. If they don't go into a sweeping Pokemon, well then now you just get even more Swords Dance, you Shadow Sneak, and then you win. Mimikyu snowballs the game like an Aegislash that, okay, I'm bringing this in, now you can't stop it, and then I just win because no matter what option you do. Like, it puts your opponent into no matter what they do for that turn, they are going minus. They are not getting anything beneficial. You switch, well, you didn't break the disguise, that's a free thing. You break the disguise, well, now you're in an unfavorable matchup. Mimikyu likes trashing fools like that. Also, I've seen some people run the Destiny Bond, some people run the Citrus Berry. There's all kinds of weird things that you can do. Also, the Psych Up, like I said earlier, that instead of Swords Dance, you would have to gamble on that Psych Up, but it feels like more people are playing setup now than ever. It feels like more people are playing for that just late game, all-out absurdity of, I'm going to try to rush something while you're trying to go for something else, and then whoever comes out on top wins. Because it's like Rocket Tag after setup, and then the Z move happens, and then it gets wild. So a Psych Up could be very, very powerful. And because of that, I would say Shadow Claw instead of Shadow Sneak. I know giving up priority is a bit of an issue, but with that Psych Up, if you do snatch some speed boost, well, then it doesn't even matter anymore. So it depends on where the meta is going. If the meta, like once we get Pokebank transfer and people are running Baton Pass speed boost and stuff, the Psych Up Mimikyu I think is going to be something to remember. Favorite this video, like this video, comment down below because why not? You're already liking and favoriting the video. And because of that, what we need to do is just like come back to this video a couple months and then see where it goes and then remember the Psych Up Mimikyu. Because I think that that's it. I haven't seen anyone running it, but that is where it's at. And then there's some other tech, like I said, the Citrus Berry and whatnot. So let's go and do some damage calculations on the Mimikyu. And mostly we're just looking at what range do we win and kill everything. So I've Tapu Koko up right here, 70 base hit points, 85 base defense. We survived the electric terrain, timid, Life Orb, Thunderbolt. And that's when you think, wow, Mimikyu is tankier than it has any right to be. Now, it does make sense, 105 on special defense, max investing in the hit points, but then it starts setting up, and then it starts wrecking your face. So we can see at Shadow Sneak with the max just +6 on the Shadow Sneak, that's going to start finding some KOs. And then if you have Life Orb, that's even more KOs. So it shows that your opponent starts to run out of options, but play rough, even at the +2, well, play rough KOs. So if you already have a Swords Dance, this is what I mean. You bring in Mimikyu, you go for the Swords Dance, it uses Thunderbolt, and then you just play rough them, and then they die. And then that's the option that your opponent has. Now, if they say go into the Tapu Koko to try to deal with it, remember, you either have another chance to Swords Dance, they're taking free damage on the switch in, everything's going to go wrong. Everything goes wrong against the Mimikyu. And now I want to make the Aegislash comparison. So now we have Garchomp, 108 on the hit points, 95 on defense, very tanky Pokemon. I want to just kind of compare the offensive damage. So Shadow Sneak, that's going to be 23 to 28% from the Aegislash. All right, Adamant, max attack. Let's see what we can do. And then Mimikyu comes in. Mimikyu, with the Life Orb on its max attack, adamant nature, and all that stuff, slightly under on damage. Now, unfortunately, if we go +6, we're not going to find the KO on the Shadow Sneak, but against certain Pokemon, like the Play Rough is already enough. You know, +2, already enough. At +0, that Life Orb, still enough to take out the Garchomp, and then, say Garchomp breaks our disguise. Like, we just bring it in, we have the Life Orb anyways, we don't even have to worry about the setup, and then we just knock out the Garchomp. Or, if we know the opponent has some fairly strong Pokemon, well, then we can still deal with it. Alright, Swords Dance, survive the next Earthquake, go for the Play Rough, and then we're good to go. And then we can also see where that Leech Life damage goes, because if you're at +2, the next Pokemon that comes in, Leech Life at +2, that's still a solid neutral hit. You're doing like 60% to the opponent, you're healing for 30%, and then you can at least like go for that damage. Leech Life, Shadow Sneak. Oh hey, that's pretty much a KO, and then you were able to heal, and then you were able to just not take as much damage. So that's why I like Leech Life, Shadow Sneak instead of just the Shadow Claw, something like that. You just start piecing together a lot of damage, and that just kind of shows. Like Mimikyu, very powerful, has all kinds of weird options. You never know what it's going to run exactly, and then when you find out, it might be a little too late. Now, there are ways of dealing with it. You burn the Mimikyu, and it's going to have a very bad time. You can just outspeed it with like an insane Steel-type hit. So, Mimikyu does have quite a bit of threats, but once you eliminate those threats, or once you play around the Mimikyu really well, the game is over. So, guys, enjoy the video. Mimikyu, it's busted. Yes, puns, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.